Okay, when I say that the stuff we're talking about today will instantly improve your writing, you might still have 5 or 6 months of rewrites to do. But that's still pretty instant on like a geologic timescale. So no, I don't think the title is misleading. Today, I'm talking about 5 shifts that, when made, will immediately improve your writing. These are things that once you start doing, you should see instant improvement in your writing. I should stop saying the word instant. That might make this video instantly better. All right, first major shift is to focus on the effects of what you're describing rather than the subject that you're describing. If a character is sweltering under a really hot day, we'll see them wiping the sweat from their brows, or tugging at their collar, maybe rolling up their sleeves, or chugging down Gatorade. Implying that it is a hot day out by showing the effects that the heat has on the characters and on the scene is a much better way to write description compared to just saying that it was really hot out. This is a case of describing the effects of the subject, a really hot day, rather than the subject itself. There's a time and a place for being more explicit, and you will likely mix some descriptions of a subject into your writing, but focusing on the effects of what you're describing, whether it's a character action, something in the environment, some kind of object in the scene, whatever it is, focusing on the effects of that thing rather than the subject is a much better way to get information across to the reader. The effects of something, after all, are what the reader would feel if they were in that scene, and we want the reader to feel like they're in that scene by feeling what it would feel like to be in that scene. Do you feel me? Whenever you describe anything, think about the effects of that thing on the characters who experience it. Don't just list off facts like it's hot out, or the night was dark, or the alligator's teeth were really sharp. Show the effects, show what it feels like. That will improve your descriptions immensely. Next shift that will improve your writing is making sure that every scene has at least some structure. Sometimes when you read a scene, it will go on for like a page and a half describing the building that it takes place in, or you'll have a character who's just sort of ruminating about something, or maybe there's some action going on, but we aren't really told what's going on. There's no structure to the scene. The action and what happens in the scene isn't laid out in a deliberate way. Every single scene needs to have some kind of structure to it. At the extreme end here, people will tell you that every scene in your novel needs to be like its own self-contained story. I think that goes a little bit far, but there is a place for structuring your scenes, and doing this will really improve your writing. There is a purpose and a methodology to how you lay out the information in a scene. There's a reason to do things in a specific order because it makes things easier for the reader and it makes the writing more enjoyable. I like a simple 4 or 5 part structure to a scene. I'm sure there's all kinds of scene structures and stuff that you can look up out in the world, but I like to keep it fairly simple. Start with setting the stage, tell us the where, the who, what, who is in the scene, what are they doing, where are they, describe the environment, sort of funnel everything down to the character, the situation they're in, and the actions they're taking. We don't need to know every single little detail, but we do need to get the general gist of who the character is and where they are and what's going on. I should, at the very minimum, within like half a page of the scene starting, know that Gary is in a slow-moving line at a Rite Aid pharmacy trying to buy some Imodium that he really, really needs at that very moment. Next part of the scene structure is an action or a goal that the character is working towards. The reader needs at least a general idea about this. If Gary had a bad burrito and he's trying to get some very specific medication in order to not spend the weekend shopping for new pants, that's a goal, that's an action, that's enough for the reader to know, and that will help ground them in the scene and let them know where the scene is going. With the action comes some conflict or obstacles, difficulties that the character encounters when they're trying to achieve their goal. Generally, you don't want a straight, linear character gets set up, character goes off, starts trying to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, and accomplishes it without issue. You want there to be some obstacle, something in the way that prevents the character from easily achieving their goal. And then at the end of the scene, we have some kind of conclusion where the character either achieves the goal or perhaps has to try again in another scene. Thinking about scene structure like this will make all of your novel more enjoyable because every scene will have a sense of purpose and progress. The reader will feel like the story is constantly moving forward. It won't feel like it gets stuck or just wanders around. A lack of scene structure can lead to boring stories because the reader will just feel like they're waiting around. There won't feel like there's any progress. Next shift that will instantly improve your writing is to balance action and reaction. I've been told on several occasions from critique partners that my writing feels a lot like watching a movie. Now, that's partially a compliment, but it also points to a big flaw that I really need to work on. I write in a very cinematic style, often without enough character introspection. Readers can see what's going on quite well, but they don't know what's happening underneath, and that's a big problem. A lot of my writing focuses on actions happening in the world, but not enough on the reactions of the characters and the reactions that the characters are having to those actions. Some people go the other way. I would say it's probably more common to actually go the other way based on my experience with critiquing. A lot of writers spend way too much time on reactions, way too much time writing what characters think and what they feel, too much introspection and navel gazing, too much internal rumination, and not enough action, not enough plot and progress and whatnot. Action tells readers what's happening in the scene. The reactions that characters have in that scene tell us why the action matters and what the readers should think about those actions. You want a balance of both. You can't have too much of one and not enough of the other. Next shift that will improve your writing: be slightly more obvious than you think you need to be. No one is as familiar with your story as you are, especially the reader. Your job as a writer fundamentally is to get the reader up to speed on your story. They need to learn the ins and outs of the world and the characters. You need to take the story that's in your head and transpose it into their head. It can be really easy to forget how little the reader knows about your story and how unfamiliar they are with it. This means that a lot of what you deliver may need to be done in a much more obvious way than you might first think. Being too subtle risks the reader missing important information or failing to pick up on what you're putting down. If you've had other people read your work, it's amazing the details that seem glaringly obvious that they will just completely miss for whatever reason. It is so hard to get all of the information across to the reader. Sometimes it feels like you're just bashing them over the head with it and then they still don't get it. Now, obviously, you can go too far with this. You can drop hints that are more like boulders landing directly onto the readers. That's obviously not a good thing. There is a balance between hitting the readers over the head with the information and being so subtle that they just completely miss everything. This is actually a place where critique partners can be a bit deceptive. Assuming that they're a good critique partner, if they're reading your writing for the purposes of critique, they're probably paying way more attention to it, maybe even reading it multiple times or going a lot slower or at least thinking about it a lot more than someone is likely to do if they're just reading the novel for pleasure. So in that case, it's a really good sign, I think. If critique partners can't pick up on something, then that definitely means that a casual reader likely won't pick up on it, and you need to be much more obvious. Once you start doing this, readers will pick up on more of what you're putting in your writing, and the writing will improve. And the last shift that will improve your writing: taking more risks. I think you should always feel a little bit uncomfortable about your writing. I think you should always feel some uncertainty about how far you're going with it. Now, this does not mean being overtly offensive just for the sake of it. You can write all kinds of shocking, horrific, and arguably risky stuff that just makes a spectacle. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit if you want to piss people off. That's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about not playing it safe. I'm talking about taking the story in directions that are more exciting but less certain. Playing it safe usually results in uninteresting stories. Familiarity is comfortable, but comfort is just kind of mid, as the millennials say. Taking the riskier option is also often the more interesting option, and I think that's something that you should do as much as you can. This is good not only for pushing your story, but also improving your skills, because the stuff that seems hard to write, the stuff that you're unfamiliar with writing, the stuff that you're uncertain about, is also the stuff that you need to write in order to improve your skills. Fiction is different from a lot of work that most people do. I mean, you could say the same thing about most art forms, I suppose, but safe and conservative just doesn't move the needle when it comes to effective writing. Again, I don't think you should set out to be offensive or shocking just for the sake of being shocking. There is an art to pushing the limits and making a story feel edgy and maybe a little bit risque without it just coming across as unsubtle and rage bait or whatever. I think doing the things, going in directions where you're a little bit more uncertain, taking a bit more risks with your writing is a major shift that will improve your writing. Speaking of shifting things, it's time to shift away from this video because we're at the end of this video. So there you have it. I'd love to hear about any shifts you've made that have dramatically improved your writing in the comments down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.